There are certain baseball card sets that are simply iconic. These are sets that even the most casual card collector is likely familiar with. And there are also sets that continue to rise in value because of certain legendary rookie cards. I mean, everybody knows about this card, right? But what about all the other sets? What about the thousands and thousands of baseball card sets and the millions of cards and all this other stuff that nobody talks about? So what do we do with those? How do we classify those? Do we just burn them, right? Well, that's what we're talking about today. We're going to talk today about the most underrated baseball card sets of all time, at least in my opinion, right? We're going to look at the top 10 of these, and they're in some kind of order. Stick around and find out. Now, some of these underrated sets are extraordinarily rare. Others are so common that you've probably got a set collecting dust in your closet right now. Still, I'm willing to bet that there are some sets here that you've never heard of. And some of these sets are underrated because they were overshadowed by more famous and more heavily hyped sets. Anyway, as you probably guessed, right, like all of this is my opinion, dude, so take it for what it's worth. There are people who complain about this when I say this is my opinion or this is what I think or whatever. Well, screw you. This is my channel. I'm going to say what I want to say. I don't know. Maybe you disagree. People have weird opinions on stuff, right? So I don't know. You can tell me what you think about it. Now, you also need to know up front that I'm not a financial advisor. Don't take financial advice from me, even though I look pretty good in a suit. I'm just some idiot who talks about baseball stuff, right? I've tried to do a couple of things here with this list. I wanted to look for some sets that are relatively underpriced considering their scarcity, especially some of the older sets. I'm also looking for sets that are like really good, as in they look good, but for one reason or another, like nobody wants to buy them. This is especially true of the junk wax era sets. Above all, though, the sets that I've chosen here are sets that I actually like. I want to look at these sets. I don't think that these sets suck, even if they're extremely common. Anyway, enough of that. Let's jump in. Okay, so first here on our list is this old Calbee set from 1973. I could have chosen any of the Calbee sets, but I decided to go for the first one. All of the Calbee sets offer excellent photography and very clean-looking cards. The photographs in the initial 1973 set are miles above what Topps was doing in that year. And these cards are legitimately hard to find, especially outside of Japan. And best of all, the design here is simple. The front of the card is just a photo. That's what I like best. Cards that are photos, maybe with like a name or something like that. But let's stay away from the complex borders and the bad examples of 90s graphic design. Now, not all the sets in this list are like that. In fact, if I did that, this list would be totally boring. But honestly, most collectors just want something that looks simple and nice. The card companies didn't understand that back then, and they still don't understand it today, even after all these years of evidence. Almost every single one of these cards is superior to anything that you get from the 1973 Topps set. And yeah, I know that 73 Topps is supposed to be on these lists of underrated sets. While it's really not a bad set, it's not even in the same ballpark as the first Calbee set. I mean, just look at the cards and tell me which one of these looks better to you. Anyway, the other interesting thing about the Calbee cards is that they came in bags of potato chips. I believe that the cards at least had some sort of protective wrapper. So you saw a bunch of other sets in North America in the 70s, 60s, and whatever that came with all sorts of food crap. And usually they just stick the card in there or was part of the Kellogg's box or whatever, right? At least Calbee had the sense to protect the card. This is the only example of 1973 Calbee packaging I could find. My guess is that this was stuck in the bag of chips. Anyway, the truth is that these cards are absolutely stunning, especially if you can get them in high condition. And like I said, even some of the blurrier photos look better than a lot of what we get in baseball cards today. Anyway, the Calbee cards kept the same basic flavor as the years went on, and a lot of these cards are really hard to find. In my personal opinion, though, the first year is the best. And I really, really wish that we had more sets like this one out there. Anyway, if you ever get a chance to buy these cards, buy them. You won't regret it. Remember, not a financial advisor. That's, sort of my opinion. Anyway, the next set on this list is one that probably slipped past your radar when it came out, because I know it certainly slipped past mine. The 2009 Topps base set is a set that I certainly didn't pay any attention to. Now, the card design looks pretty generic to me. I don't like that aspect. And the backs look a little bit too clean, like they were made using a computer. It's nothing like those colored backs from the 1950s. But the photography here is amazing for a base set. In fact, I honestly do not think that there is a single bad card in the entire set. And in my opinion, again, that's amazing for a 2009 set. You see, by this time, companies like Topps were focused almost exclusively on making these premium-like type sets. So the way that this works, let me be upfront with you, is that they're selling like garbage to gambling addicts. Premium cards suck, right? You look at the premium card, it's made to be flashy, it's got all this bling and all this stuff. It's designed to like look really interesting and stand out to you. But like when you have these 1 of 50 cards, they all look the same. The 1 of 10, it's the same design. Maybe the color's a little different. I mean, it sucks, right? Who cares about cards like that, right? But the problem is that the people with big money who were like throwing out money at cards, the whales, they were buying this stuff up. And so as a result, Topps stopped caring about the base sets. It was all about inserts back in 2009, just like today. Now, the truth is that 2009 Topps might be the last time that we see a base set that actually has good photography. Personally, I started to get back into the hobby in 2007 Topps. Now, I never liked the design of 2007. In fact, these look even worse in person than they do in these photos. And the backs are as ugly as sin. But hey, at least it was better than 2006 Topps, which is the set that never should have happened. Anyway, for some reason or other, I was really excited for the 2008 Topps baseball card set. You'd think that I would learn after like getting burned on 2007. So I'll tell you, before all of this happened, the last time I seriously would spend money on card packs was 94 Topps. I still love that design. Afterwards, it just wasn't so much fun anymore. Anyway, so I was in college, and when 2008 Topps came out, I had some money, went over to 7-Eleven, I would buy packs. In fact, I remember buying packs of the opening day version of that set right after it came out, and I was disappointed by one of the worst card designs I've ever seen. Like, seriously, who gave this the green light? Topps apparently decided that we needed bigger borders and smaller photos for 2008. In fact, this is one of those special sets where the package looks better than the actual cards. Anyway, the base set looks a little bit cleaner, but the design, seriously, totally sucks. And that honestly makes 2009 Topps look even more legendary in comparison. I will never understand why companies can't figure out that collectors like cards with nice looking photos, not cards with really thick borders and all this crap. Anyway, 2009 Topps is one of those diamond in the rough sets. It's one of those special sets that sit along there alongside all sorts of worthless stuff. And people really have forgotten how good this set is. Seriously, don't even worry about like the inserts and subsets and all of that crap. What you want here is the base set. Skip the rest. And of course, since the base set was heavily printed and there's like no demand, you can get it in sealed condition for really cheap. And honestly, a lot of the sets on this list are just like that. I stayed away from the sets of like the late 50s and most of the 60s and a bunch of the 70s. The reason why is it's hard to find anything special when it was all just Topps, and it's like, well, here's this year's Topps set, right? I mean, who cares, right? Now, 2009 Topps is one of those legendary sets that isn't a legend yet. I recommend buying it now before people catch on. The next set, though, is a lot easier to find, and it's a lot better than you think. 1990 Upper Deck is kind of like the forgotten stepchild of baseball card collecting. The more that I look at this set, the more impressed I am by it. Upper Deck put together an absolutely fantastic baseball set in 1990, even though it's kind of strange that Maddox is shown fielding, not pitching. And honestly, the backs of these cards are even better than 1989 Upper Deck. Now, this video is not the time or place for me to explain exactly how revolutionary 1989 Upper Deck was. That video is coming. I'm going to make a video on the rise and fall of Upper Deck in the future. And yeah, I know nobody's done that yet on YouTube, or if they have, like, send me your video. I haven't seen it. I've been looking. But if you're interested in quality photography and cards that look better than the Griffey rookie, go for 1990 Upper Deck Baseball. Man, the set looks freaking amazing. Of course, the best part of this set is the fact that it doesn't suck, which is really rare for a 1990 baseball card set. In my opinion, 1990 was the worst year in the history of baseball cards. It seems like every single company put out a bunch of garbage in 1990 for whatever reason. And I kid you not, I almost went blind because of this stupid Donruss set. I have a million of these cards. If the sets weren't an eyesore, they were boring, like this Fleer set with these really lame photos. Or there's this Bowman set that makes spring training look like an utter, like, mind-boggling waste of boredom. Upper Deck is seriously the only 1990 baseball card set you should even think about getting. And the best part is that these cards are dirt cheap. And these sets are always going to be dirt cheap. Do not buy 1990 Upper Deck thinking that like you're going to make a return on your investment. It's not going to be worth anything in 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, right? There's so many of these cards out here that like next time you have another pandemic, you don't need to buy toilet paper, go buy 1990 Upper Deck, right? You'll be fine. Anyway, the next set on this list is going to be controversial, especially if you're my age. But I think there's a good reason to consider this one of the truly underrated and forgotten sets in all of baseball card set history. Okay, so maybe 1983 Topps is not the cheapest set on this list. Maybe this set does have a few legendary rookie cards that will keep its value at least relatively high. But seriously, I just love the design of these cards. In fact, I think this is the best looking Topps set of the entire decade of the 1980s. Actually, I think that this design is one of the best looking designs that Topps has ever come out with. Now, Topps did not have a ton of competition in 1983. Both Fleer and Donruss were still sort of figuring out how to like make baseball cards and how to distribute baseball cards. The nice thing though about 1983 Topps is that it looks a lot better than a lot of the more famous Topps sets of the 1980s. I mean, I know that the internet has had this love affair with 1987 Topps for years. You probably already knew about this as well. Now, I blame Ben Henry, who wrote on his baseball card blog back in 2006 the 1987 Topps was the greatest set of all time. Henry called this set the pinnacle of baseball cards, which I think is a little bit overblown for a dirt cheap junk wax set. I mean, I get it. I bought tons of these wax packs throughout my childhood in like 87 and 88 and 89 and 90, 91, 92 and so on, since they were always cheaper than the most recent set. But I do think that these cards are just a little bit overrated. And I'm honestly a real sucker for this picture-in-picture design. Anyway, shout out to Ben Henry and his blog. I think he stopped it a while back. I can't remember anymore. So I'll tell you the story. Back in like 2006, 2007, I was in college. You know, I would spend a lot of time reading his blog when I was at the library. So like I would go there to write a paper or whatever, you know, and I would write like a couple paragraphs and do some research. And then I spend like an hour reading the baseball card blog, right? The other kids around me were kind of geeky, you know, they're getting really deep into it. They're actually reading the books they're citing and stuff. I didn't do that. I was too busy reading about baseball cards. Time well spent. Anyway, 1987 Topps is a great set and I love it, but 1983 is better, guys. Plus, of course, 1983 had the better rookie cards. There was a time when this Wade Boggs rookie was worth big money, back before people realized that there are a million of these things out there. And then there was this Sandberg rookie card, which is still pretty famous. Anyway, 1983 Topps also gets bonus points for inspiring the 1984 OPC hockey set. This is one of my favorite hockey sets of all time. Overall, this is a design that does not get enough love. And that's why it's underrated. Anyway, the next set on this list is one of two sets on the list that are not base sets technically, so yeah, I'm cheating. I wanted to keep this limited to base sets, but there are two sets that are so good that I've got to mention them. The first set here is one you probably know about. The second one is one you probably don't. 1992 Fleer Ultra is the set you've probably heard of before. This was one of those premium sets. This was a set that was designed to compete directly with Upper Deck. Now, I don't know about you. Personally, I love this design. And the card backs are almost better than the card fronts. Now, Fleer was not the only company trying to out-premium Upper Deck, of course, but Fleer Ultra really was something special back in 1992 and 1993. So I chose the 1992 set because I felt I could only choose one of them. I would recommend both of those sets. They're both awesome. I mean, Upper Deck had a good set in 1992. Check out this Jim Abbott card. The whole card just screams early 1990s. Topps also had a great thing going on with the early days of Stadium Club. And do you remember this special Stadium Club Skydome set that was supposed to be rare, but it turned out to be incredibly common? Still, Fleer Ultra looks just better than those other two sets. Or at least it looks better in my opinion. See, here I go again, right? Someone's going to complain about this, right? But I mean, I don't know, maybe you feel different, right? There's a lot of stupid people out there. People like all sorts of weird stuff. Seriously though, those Fleer Ultra cards are some of my favorite cards from the junk wax era. After all, not all junk wax is created equal. Just be careful though with unopened packs since the cards tend to stick together. Instead of messing with that, try to buy the complete set in a binder since the raw cards will stick together if they're in a raw box. Anyway, the Fleer Ultra basketball set that season is also really legendary, and this hockey set is simply incredible. It's a shame that we can't have cool stuff like this in sports cards these days. I mean, the truth is that we had it pretty good back in the early 1990s. Anyway, like I said, that's one of the 2 cheating sets in this list, and here comes the second one. This one's a little bit more obscure, but I think you'll see why I like this set so much. Back in 2010, Topps decided to come out with this National Chicle set as an experiment. These were all painted cards, not computerized versions of images like you see with some of the Topps nostalgic products. And for a set that nobody's ever heard of, these cards are absolutely fantastic. Now, there is a history behind all this that I should explain to you. You see, there was this fascination with making like cards that look like art that goes way back. I mean, back like 120 years. The easiest way for me to explain this is to just show you. I mean, one of the reasons why T206 is so beloved is because of the artwork. The same is true of sets like 1933 Gaudi. These old sets are so well loved in large part because the illustrations are so attractive. And the sets that competed directly with Gaudi had a similar artistic approach. Now, this trend continued for decades. In fact, if you go to the 1950s, the reason why a set like 52 cards was so famous is because the cards looked like works of art. The same is true of the Bowman sets from 1950, 51, 52, 53, and so on, right? They had this aesthetic value. It was more than just a picture of a player. I mean, maybe the airbrushing was a little bit much, but these cards really are attractive. And like I said, the early years of Bowman were filled with cards that look almost like printings of oil paintings. Even in poor condition, these cards look amazing. Now, when Topps won the monopoly from Bowman, the artistic concepts went away. It took a couple years, but they were gone by like 1960. After all, when there's nobody to compete with, there's no point in making card sets that look like works of art. And as soon as the Topps monopoly ended, the artwork came back. Of course, the truth is that the early Diamond Kings didn't really look all that great. I mean, what's wrong with George Brett's face? But as the years went by, the art on these Donruss cards did improve. And by the late 1980s, the artwork had basically reached its height. Now, the art side of baseball cards did stick around for years, even after Donruss cut out the Diamond King cards. And in the early 2000s, the world of art collided with a renewed fascination with classic baseball card design. So I mean, you had sets like Topps Archives, which were reprints of classic cards with this foil stamp, and you also had Topps Heritage, which were new cards featuring new players done up in a classic style. Of course, as you guys already know, Heritage continues to this day and has basically overtaken the modern Topps base set in popularity. And now the truth about this is I can't find Topps Heritage cards anywhere where I live. I live in Northern Virginia, right? I don't know, maybe this is baseball card heaven or something. I don't know. Whenever I go to like Walmart or Target or something like that, I always go down to the aisle. I can never find anything, right? I can find all the cards that have like no team logos on them or whatever, but no one wants that. Now I know that like right now these cards are in a bubble, but seriously guys, I can't find anything. They're like Pokemon cards, right? You can't find them anywhere. But there is a problem with Heritage that you probably never noticed. So the problem I have with these sets is that they are digitally created cards that are designed to emulate the original classic series. Both the fronts and the backs have a really generic digital feel to them. They're missing character and like human input. It's like an AI version of baseball cards. The same goes for the classic Upper Deck Gaudi set from 2007. This looks like a digital mess to me. My problem with this set is that it feels like Upper Deck's Photoshop disasters. It doesn't feel like art. And that's also my issue with Upper Deck's Masterpiece sets in 2007 and 2008. To me, these cards are just digital nightmares. So the idea is right, but the digital nature of these cards really hurts that aesthetic value. And that's the thing that Topps got right with this 2010 National Chicle set. The cards were actually art, not digitally manipulated photos. The cards remind me a lot of what I loved about Donruss's Diamond Kings. The backs also included information about the artist, which is something that we never got from classic baseball card sets. And honestly, for a set that gets no love, this really is a beautiful group of cards. Plus, the base set is really cheap today. And even getting the master set is actually pretty cheap. It's especially cheap compared to Topps Heritage, right? Heritage has the stupid, like, the scarce cards, the artificial scarcity and stuff like that. I mean, you don't want that crap. Anyway, this is a set worth looking into. This is a set that people have simply forgotten about. Now, set number 4 on this list is a set that people deep in the hobby still do remember, but most collectors still tend to ignore. And there's a good reason for that. So for years, there was this company called TCMA. There was a company that specialized in like baseball card catalogs. They put out a group of sets for minor league teams. Now, TCMA was really a baseball card reselling company, but it put out its own line of sets on the side to help make ends meet. By the mid-1970s, TCMA was putting out cards for players and teams that had never received contemporary cards in real life. And that's what led TCMA to start making actual Major League Baseball cards. TCMA put out a test set of big league baseball players in 1975 under the name SSPC, that would be the Sports Stars Publishing Company. Now, I'm guessing that they were trying to like distract Topps by saying, oh, that's not us, that's that other random company that you can't find out anything about, right? But it didn't work. SSPC put out one full set in 1976, 660 cards. It was sued by Topps, and that was the end. But that 76 set, it's beautiful. I mean, if you just glance at these cards, you'll see that they look a lot like those Calbee cards that I started talking about at the beginning of the video. And these pictures were simply incredible, especially for 1976. I mean, in contrast, 1976 Topps looks like a total waste of time. Anybody would rather have the SSPC cards. Now, my understanding is that these cards were only available through mail order. That's why a lot of people don't collect them. Since you could not get them through normal packs back then, there are quite a few people who feel that these are not proper baseball cards. And yet, the hobby has a really major gatekeeping problem and has for decades. Anyway, despite the fact that these cards didn't come in packs, they really still are amazing. And it's just incredible how underappreciated this set is these days. You can still get the full set for $200 or so, and this is a 1976 set. This is 50 years old. Even the cheapest 1976 Topps set will cost over twice that. So I'm not sure how long 1976 SSPC is going to remain so underappreciated. It reminds me a lot of those star basketball card sets from the mid-80s. You know that whole thing about like which one is the real Jordan rookie and all that stuff? Like we might be seeing that sort of thing here as well. If all you care about is cards that look good, get 1976 SSPC. Now, set number 3 on this list is another controversial one, mostly because this set is so readily available. 1988 Score probably brings back a lot of painful memories for many of you. This was supposed to be the set that was going to make us rich when we got older. The problem, of course, is that everybody invested in a copy of this set, which meant that its value is absolutely zero. In fact, to this day, you can get this set for practically nothing. So I blame the mainstream media, which is a good thing to blame, right? I also blame all the baseball card publications that told us the 1988 Score was going to be the new 1952 Topps. There was this massive marketing campaign back then where everybody was talking about how significant it was to get a new set by a new company, you know, like the first year, right? The thing is, though, that there were reasons back then to believe the 1988 Score would do better than 81 Donruss and Fleer. We thought that way because 1988 Score really was a nice looking set. You see, those first Donruss and Fleer sets were filled with frustrating variations and these crazy error cards. Those cards also have really awful cardstock quality, especially Fleer, and the photos looked like total garbage. In contrast, Score's first set had great photos and good cardstock. Sure, the borders are dated, but this is easily the best baseball card set of 1988 and is one of the best sets of the late 1980s. In fact, the more that I look at this set, the more that I like it. Now, Score had one other thing that nobody else had. It had full-color card backs. We hadn't seen that since the classic Topps sets of the mid-50s, and yet everybody's forgotten about that part. The backs included multiple colors plus a full-color photo in the upper left, something extremely rare in big baseball card sets in those days. So Fleer had some color but didn't use photos on the back in 1988. And when Fleer did use photos on the back a few years earlier, they were extremely low resolution and looked like garbage. 1988 Topps had this stupid baseball card design that made the name unreadable. At least Donruss was readable, though these backs suck compared to Score. Anyway, maybe you don't care about the backs, but I care about them, and this is my channel. The backs of cards these days suck as well, right? This is one of the many things wrong with the hobby today. I know, get off my lawn, you kids and whatever. Like, the fronts of cards these days look like AI slop. The backs are boring and predictable. I know, they have like war and that crap on them, but the backs suck, man. I want to see like a photo or a cartoon. I don't want to see something that looks square and predictable. Anyway, you've forgotten the 1988 score was such a cool set because Upper Deck came out the next year and did exactly the same thing, but like a million times better. Upper Deck's colors were even more vibrant and the card stock was high quality wide. And the backs contained only a few stats plus a secondary bonus photo. And seriously, there was no way that other companies were going to ever compete with amazing photos like this. Even still, though, 1988 Score is an underrated classic. It's one of those sets that we really need to talk about more often. Seriously, this is what baseball cards are supposed to look like. The nice thing about 1988 Score is that there is probably enough out there for every man, woman, and child and pet in North America to have their own set. I recommend buying, but not as an investment. I recommend buying because the cards are awesome. Anyway, the final two sets on this list are quite a bit more expensive than anything we've seen so far, but these are still underrated sets that have been forgotten by just about everybody, and it's time that these sets got their due. Okay, everybody knows about 1952 Topps. This is one of the most legendary baseball card sets of all time, sure. And I suppose that it was an improvement over the 1951 Bowman baseball set, which is a better set than you think. But the set that everybody forgets about is 1952 Bowman, which was Topps' competitor. Now, in 1952, the Topps set had more cards than the Bowman set. Sure, it had like 50 more cards, and then came like the 90 whatever card final set, right? But like the Topps set dwarfs Bowman's cards in terms of numbers because Topps cheated. So that famous final high series of 52 Topps came out after the season ended and after the World Series ended. And like you couldn't buy the cards. Distribution was awful, right? It never really left like the New York, Philadelphia area, except some went up to Canada and somehow some got to Los Angeles by like February 53 or something like that. Right? I don't know this for a fact because I haven't studied it, but I do suspect that Topps held off on releasing a lot of cards until the final series because it wanted to avoid the lawsuit that was going to come from Bowman, right? And it really is that final high series that made Topps so famous in 52. And it wasn't that famous in 52. It was a couple of years when people figured all this stuff out. I mean, as cool as George Metkovich was, this wasn't exactly the sort of player that Topps wanted to end its inaugural set on. Meanwhile, Bowman's entire set consisted of these great-looking works of art combined with player facsimile autographs. And honestly, it's just amazing to me how affordable these cards still are today given their age and how nice they look. Once you get past the mantle, the rest of the set is actually pretty cheap. Of course, Bowman really did hurt itself in 1952. You see, Bowman's cards, of course, were smaller than Topps' cards, but then again, those 52 Topps cards are bigger than today's cards as well, so that's not really such a big problem. Now, Bowman's problem was the lack of brand name recognition. So if you were a kid, you're at the drugstore, you would see the Topps name and logo from the box. Bowman's box, on the other hand, just said baseball cards. I mean, even the old Bowman cases didn't have the company's name or logo anywhere. Bowman was pretty arrogant back when there was no competition and basically assumed that it was the only baseball card company around. Topps, meanwhile, had its name all over the place. The branding here is obvious, you just can't miss it. And unfortunately for Bowman, the old 1952 packs look really dull. This was the exact same pack design that Bowman had used in 1951, except there was this little all-new 1952 sign on the pack. Like, what you have to understand is that back then, it wasn't like today where you go to like Walmart and there are cards all over the place in packs and like people are like trying to like use the X-Acto knife to open it and stuff like that, right? Like in 52, what they would do is they would have it at the drugstore and it was behind the counter. So if you wanted like bubblegum with baseball cards, you had to ask for it and you'd have like the boxes like next to each other or whatever, right? So like kids would have to be able to tell what it was they were getting. Right? And they could see the name Topps because it's in big letters and everything. Bowman didn't do that, right? Anyway, this is what made Topps get the ability to like jump in and steal Bowman's thunder. But those 1952 Bowman cards are still really underrated. Sure, this might not be the cheapest set in the world, but it's at least still within the reach of mere mortals with ordinary budgets. And I personally think this is one of those underrated sets that really might go up in the future. But you never know given how the hobby is, right? Like I said, not a financial advisor. The best advice is to just collect what you enjoy and let whatever's going to happen, happen. Anyway, I love 1952 Bowman. In fact, I love all of the Bowman sets from like 1950 through 55, but it's not number one. Now, the number one underrated baseball card set is a set that is criminally underrated, and it's a set that everyone's forgotten about. The old T206 set is easily the most famous baseball card set in history. This tobacco set has been the stuff of legend for decades now, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. And of course, it helps when you've got the most famous baseball card in history in the set. But the follow-up to T206 actually looks better. That would be the T205 set. Yeah, that's right. So you have T206 first, and then T205. What were they thinking? Well, we have Jefferson Burdick to thank for that. That's right. Nobody called these cards T206 or T205 or T whatever back in 1910. Now, that designation didn't come around until the 1930s. So that would be thanks to this man, Jefferson Burdick, the father of baseball card collecting. Burdick's American Card Catalog was the first serious attempt to catalog American postcards and trading cards, and it started in the 1930s. Now, Jefferson's work included more than just baseball cards, though the baseball card designations have become the most famous of everything that he did as the years have gone by. And it was Burdick who came up with the various set designations. So I don't know if Jefferson Burdick actually knew precisely what years the cards were issued. However, it has become clear over the years that T206 was indeed issued before the T205 cards. In fact, we know this because a lot of the T205 cards have stats on the back. It's hard, though, to distinguish these sets since T206 was issued over the space of like 4 years, and both of these sets came out from the American Tobacco Company. But of course, the designs are different, especially since T205 had those famous gold borders. Some of these cards are famous, of course, such as this amazing Mathewson card. Unlike the T206 cards, the T205 backs feature some stats and a brief biography in addition to the small advertisement on the bottom. The most famous Mathewson variant is this one, which erroneously states that he only had a single loss in 1908. And notice down here that the set was apparently originally designed to have 400 cards. Well, that didn't happen, of course. Now, this is total speculation on my part, but I do believe that part of the reason T205 was cut short is because the American Tobacco Company was ruled an illegal monopoly in summer 1911 by the Supreme Court. It's almost certain to me that the death of the old tobacco cards came in large part because of this ruling. American Tobacco controlled a large and really confusing number of brands, which is one reason why you see so many variations of the backs of those T206 cards. And this was really, really, really big news in 1911, even though it's been mostly forgotten today. Of course, the problem with my theory is that T205 was not the last of the American Tobacco sets. So I don't know, maybe the 400 card advertisement was referring to something else? American Tobacco came out with another set in 1912, which is commonly referred to as T207. There were no stats in this set, but the backs do look similar to T205 cards. And it seems that the tradition continued for a while, bleeding into these Victory Tobacco cards from 1915. This is called T214. Once World War I ended, however, the old cigarette card tradition went away for good. In my mind, though, the T205 cards are the best looking out there of all of the sets that existed from tobacco companies and stuff like that. I should mention as well that, so 1915 was kind of the end of the tobacco baseball cards. You still had cards in Canada that came out, and in Great Britain, there were all these soccer cards that came out going up until the end of World War II. Even still, though, I've looked at the cards. T205 is the best. None of the other cards look even close to this one. There were a number of different designs around the player. This was really common for photographs back in those days, including in newspapers. In general, the National League cards have more of an emphasis on the player's face. In contrast to that, the American League cards tended to have these intricate designs framing the player's face. Anyway, as I've said like a million times, this is one of my favorite tobacco card sets of all time. Plus, none of these cards are going to run you $1 million, not yet at least. The most expensive rare card that really is rare is about 70 grand. I mean, I'm not going to buy it, right? But, you know, if you don't want to buy like a Maserati or whatever, go for it, man. Anyway, let me know. What do you think about these 10 sets, right? Did I miss anything? Am I like full of crap? Are these awful sets? Do you hate this video? Do you think I smell bad? Let me know what you think in the comments and we'll get you some help.